Why is Russia so big? This is Russia, and this is Russia, and this is Russia. If you want to go from one end of Russia to the other, it takes 6 days by train. More than 100 different languages are spoken in Russia, and there are 11 time zones in the country. So while people in the easternmost part are sleeping, people in the westernmost part are going to work. I mean, Russia is really big. So how did this happen? How did Russia stay so big while other countries are breaking up one by one? Each country has its own shape and size. Let's look at a few. Monaco, for example, one of the smallest countries in the world, only 2,000 kilometers. Let's make it bigger. One of my favorite countries. Italy, 301,000 kilometers. Let's move on. Turkey, 783,000 kilometers. Canada, the second largest country in the world, is almost 10 million kilometers. Now look at the largest country in the world, Russia, exactly 17 million kilometers. Russia has 1/8 of the total habitable area in the world. This graph shows the 5 largest countries in the world, and Russia is almost twice as big as the second largest country. Let's look at the size of Russia on a map. Russia is part of Europe. It shares the Black Sea with Turkey, but it also borders China and North Korea. Would you believe me if I told you that you could swim from Russia to America? Let's take a closer look at the map. There are actually only 3 kilometers between Russia and America, so yes, theoretically you can swim from Russia to America. Russia is huge, but it wasn't always this big. In fact, it used to be tiny. So let's go back 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, Russia was this small, and they were called Kievan. But the place where they built their country had one weakness, and that was this. They were surrounded by flat land. Everywhere they looked, there was flat grass. So what that means is this. Anyone who got on a horse could easily cross the flat streams and get to Kiev. And that's exactly what happened. 40,000 Mongols rode into Kiev from Asia. And you can imagine what they did. They burned, destroyed, and looted. I am very happy that I was not in the world at that time. Imagine one day you are sitting in your house and you hear voices coming from outside, and you see 40,000 men on horseback running towards you. Anyway, as a result, the Kiev Knezli could not resist the Mongols, and they had to accept everything they wanted. The deal was done, but the Slavs were quietly getting stronger. There was a city here that organized resistance to the Mongols, Muscovy. This Muscovy was the ancestor of the city we now know as Moscow. Moscow was famous for its furs, and because there was no Greenpeace at that time, they made a lot of money. With the money they made, they bought gunpowder and weapons from Europe, and they gathered all their courage and attacked the Mongols. You can learn more about this on history channels. I will go through it fast. As a result, the Slavs defeated the Mongols and expanded eastwards. The Slavs made a decision and they said, "We will never be invaded again." So, how do you build a country? Let's look at Turkey's borders. It's surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. Look at the border with Iran. There are mountains like Mount Dumanli, Mount Yiğit, Mount Mor, Mount Karaka. These mountains and seas naturally protect countries. The Russians thought so too and extended their borders to the Ural Mountains. You are not bad, Russians, but you are lucky. Look, there's a flaw in your plan, because the mountains end here. There was still enough flat land for armies to cross, and then Ivan the Terrible came to power. I wonder why they called this man terrible. Ivan the Terrible thought, if these mountains are useless to us, then let's see what's behind them. Ivan the Terrible and his army crossed the Ural Mountains and went further east, and they reached Siberia. This was a land of ice. Not many people lived there. Except for a few, no one even resisted the Russian invasion. In fact, they thought it was better to be part of a big empire. For the Russians, it was even better. In their search for a natural frontier, they came to places with animals with much thicker hair. More animals meant more fur and more money. The Russians' appetite was whetted. They went even further. Russia today is made up of 85 regions. 22 of them are actually republics in their own right. They have their own laws. They don't really depend on Russia except for foreign affairs. They all have their own culture. Okay, let's face it. When we think of Russia, the first thing that comes to mind is vodka. But 10 million Muslims live in Russia. When you think of Russia, you think of women with white skin and blonde hair. But look, these women are actually Russians too. Now, I will show you some things that will break your image of Russia. For example, this is Yakutia. It is a republic in Russia. It is 6 hours away from Moscow and they speak more Turkish than Russian. The capital of this republic is Yakut. It is the coldest city in the world, and there are huge holes in the center of the city. They extract diamonds from these holes. A quarter of all the diamonds in the world come from here. Or this republic between Dagestan, Azerbaijan, and Georgia is very different from Yakutia. The climate is hot and dry, and the best fighter in the world came from here. Or Chechnya, everyone thinks it is a different country, but in fact Chechnya is part of the Russian Federation. Okay, they tried very hard to be independent throughout history, but somehow they couldn't be. That could be the subject of a different video, because the relationship between Chechnya and Russia is really complicated and interesting. The last place I want to show is the Komi Republic. During the Soviet Union, it was home to some of the worst prisons in the world, but now it is famous for its natural beauty. There are very interesting rocks here. I hope one day I will go and make a video of these rocks and you can watch it. In conclusion, what I want to say is that Russia is not what Putin is trying to show. So far, the media, movies, and books have told you that Russians are white-skinned, tall, and Slavic. Let's look at the Republic of Kalmykia. Do these people look anything like the type of Russians you have been shown? Yes, after all, this is Russia, but this is also Russia, and this is Russia. Russia is home to many different cultures, and the only reason for this was the search for furs and a natural border. Anyway, I don't want this video to go on for hours. This was a video about why Russia is so big, but I'm sure I missed many things, and that's where you come in. Write me in the comments what interesting things you know about Russia so that more people can learn more. And that's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share the video, and see you in the next video.